Now, the IRS is looking into whether some families may have received wrong information related to the child tax credit. Joining us now is CPA Gene Marks to share what you need to know about filing your taxes this year. It'll save you, let's just say, big headaches. Good morning to you, Gene. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jeanette. Good to see you.
One thing you don't want to get wrong is when it comes to the IRS. Let's talk about this child tax credit because there's a bit of confusion here. What's going on and what has changed?
Well, the child tax credit for 2021 was significantly expanded based on legislation that passed earlier in the year, and it's pretty giant. There is, if you have one child, you can get up to a credit of $4,000. That's a credit against your taxes owed. If you have two children or more, it's an $8,000 credit. That's for 2021. And then it goes back to normal levels from before. So it's a big number. The other thing that's really big about the child care tax credit, Jeanette, is that it's refundable this year. So if your credit is actually more than the taxes that you owe, the government will give you a check back. So it's really, really important to get your expenses together related to the child care tax credit. I mean, that's for any daycare, babysitters, summer camps, things like that. Really, really important to talk to your accountant about it to take full advantage of it.
Yeah. What about if you collected unemployment? We know a lot of folks were doing that last couple years, but last year. What should you know about that?
You're going to be reporting whatever unemployment that you got on your returns. So you have to be really, you have to be really aware of that. Make sure you've got all the records that you received of unemployment from the state, and that includes the additional federal amount that you got as well.
And when it comes to tax software, we know a lot of folks use TurboTax, H&R Blocks, things like that. While it's very convenient, how do I say it? Are there people who perhaps maybe shouldn't use it if your tax situation is a little complex, because it can end up, biting you later on?
Yeah, listen, I mean, you're talking to a CPA here, okay? If you haven't figured that out by this look. And I do tell clients that, listen, there was some great, tax software out there. And you mentioned a few of the names like TurboTax and H&R Block, TaxSlayer. Listen, if you're really unsure if you've got anything that's really sort of unusual about your year, you bought a house, you started, a new job, you had new type of healthcare issues, you can still use that software. But to me, I think it's worthwhile spending an extra couple of $100 and having a CPA review your returns before you submit it. It's just that extra set of oversight can really keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, I've had some friends who learned that the hard way down the road. Yeah. They missed something when they used TurboTax and the like, although it is very helpful for most folks. We've heard about the IRS. They've cut down on a few people in terms of employees, and so they're expecting some delays. What's the best way to expedite things?
So I got a couple of pieces of advice for your viewers. I mean, number one is obviously you want to file your returns as soon as possible, because it really does get into a line. And the IRS has already said they're short of staff. They've got budget issues, so it might take a little bit longer to get a refund this year. So you want to get your returns filed as quickly as possible. If you have any issues filing your returns, where you think you're waiting for a refund, you haven't received it yet, check out the Taxpayer Advocacy service. You can go right to irs.gov. It's on the bottom of their homepage. The IRS does have a whole department of taxpayer advocates that can work with you about your specific situation and search whether or not you're due that refund or what the status is. And one final thing, Jeanette, you can now sign up for your own online account with the IRS. And again, that's on irs.gov. That will give you the most recent information of your payments, whether or not you're behind anywhere, any kind of forms or notices from the IRS. So, get your returns filed early. Yeah. Look for a taxpayer advocate if you feel there's any issues, and sign up for an IRS account so you can get all the most recent information right away. 3
really good points. On the opposite end of refund, if you have payments to make, what are some deadlines that you should know about?
Well, if you had estimated payments, the deadline was January 18th, so you kind of missed it. You want to make sure that you get it in as soon as possible so that you're not subject to any further interest or penalties. The remainder is, you'll be due any final payment when you finally do file your personal taxes on April 15th. But again, if you were, if you're a business, you're making estimated payments, you want to make sure you got all those estimated payments in. The rule is you got to pay 100% of what your last year's tax liability is, or at least 90% of this year's liability. Otherwise, you could be subject to interest and penalties.
All right. I think the rule is any year, but especially this year, the earlier you can get stuff done, the better, especially if you owe some money. CPA.
I agree. And I really hope we haven't lost half your audience talking about taxes here, but it's important, right?
It's important, I think, for all of us, right? If you're making money, you should know this. All right. CPA Gene Marks, appreciate you coming on. Thank you, sir.